All right, I am still waiting to get in to see the oncologist, but I wanted to share a little bit about the testing and the types of scans that I've experienced leading up to this. So before they start you on chemotherapy and probably before surgery as well, either way, the doctors are going to want to gather as much information about you as they can. They want to make sure that the cancer isn't just in your breast area. So, and they want to make sure that your heart, your kidneys, your liver, everything like that is functioning properly. So that will be a factor in determining what kind of drugs they can give you for the chemotherapy. So they sign you up for a litany of tests and appointments, blood work, and you start that little journey. And of course, I've never done anything like that before, so I thought it might be helpful to just talk about my experiences with that. And as you're waiting for them, all of a sudden you're thinking, "Mom, bone scan. What if it's in my bones?" CAT scan. Oh my goodness, what if it's already spread? My tumor is fairly large already, so there is a good possibility that that could happen. It just starts the worry cycle over again. Dealing with having a diagnosis of breast cancer is one thing, but the fear of it going beyond that and having harsher chemo or more surgery or less probability of surviving it is not a great thing. So that's what I did. I started with a bone scan. So with a bone scan, you go in, you're asked to drink lots and lots and lots before any of your scans. You go in and you disrobe, so you're just wearing a little smock, and they get you in and they have you lie down on a table. And you look across from you and you see this kind of a donut shape machinery at the foot of the table. And so it's not like an MRI where you go inside of this complete tube, which is good because that's not very much fun, but it is still a little nerve-wracking. And so they get you to lie down, and then what they want, of course, the bone scan takes a fair bit of time, so they don't want you moving during that time. So they folded a sheet across my front and put my arms inside and then folded them up again. And then they whipped out some masking tape, and they taped my arms down literally to the table so that my arms wouldn't move and that I could just relax and not worry about holding them still. And I just thought that was pretty funny, that all of a sudden the masking tape out. And then they looked at each other and said, "Should we do her toes?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, no, they got out the masking tape, wrapped a pillowcase around my feet, and then taped my feet together. And then again, I wouldn't have to worry about keep holding my feet still. And I found that was actually very helpful. And they did allow me to put a pillow underneath my knees, which was nice because, again, it takes a while. So once they get you all prepped, everybody leaves the room. And so then you are by yourself, and they just say, do your best to sit still. It's going to take, about 9 minutes for this. And so then the bed starts moving. You move toward the little donut thing. I'm looking around at this point, and they had warned me. They said ahead of time, don't worry, the bed's going to move up, but it won't. Nothing will touch you. And I'm just like, huh? Well, you get in there, and sure enough, the bed goes up like an elevator, and my eyes are open, and it literally stops maybe an inch from my nose, and I'm just looking at this grid like right in front of my eyeballs. And then I got a little bit panicky, and it's like, I gotta sit still. And so I just shut my eyes, and I did what I do to cope with stressful situations. Is I started praying and singing songs. That's what I do in my head when I'm dealing with stress at the dentist usually, but now this is a new thing. So I'll just sing songs and try and concentrate on that rather than what's going on around me. And while I was doing that, I was reminded of the verse, that God is with you. I mean, I'm alone in that room. There's no people in there, but I was not alone. I definitely felt that God was with me. He will never leave or forsake me. So that was comforting. And I did think of my cousin Reiner, who had a battle with cancer last year, and he didn't make it. He didn't survive. And I thought, man, he had to go through all of these tests over and over again during that year of his fight. And yeah, it just was really eye-opening. I thought, I wish I could talk to him, now that I see what it's really like. And yeah, you just don't think about what it's like for people who are going through this until you're actually in it. So that was so that's the first test, and then the bed comes down and it wings you out again, and he says, okay, now we're going to do a side view of your pelvis. And of course you're really paranoid now, and you're like, is it in my pelvis? Did they see something? Do I have to turn over? No, you don't turn over. The machine actually flips over on its side, and then it does that. So that there was another 4 or 5 minutes during the pelvic area for the bones, and then that's it. The bed comes out. Did they give me? Oh, they had given you a shot. So right, with the bone scan. So you come and they give you a radioactive shot in your arm, and then they say, come back in 3 hours. So because it takes that long to get circulate and get into your bones. And what happens, if I asked, was if there are any cracks or damage in your bones, then the phosphites in that solution will adhere to those problem areas, and it'll show up like a little hot spot. So they ask you, do you have any arthritis or any recent broken bones or sprains or anything like that? So yeah, so just you need to be aware that it's going to take some time to get that whole thing done from start to finish. So that was the bone scan, and I waited. It takes like 2 to 3 days, they always tell you, but I was fortunate. I got a phone call from my surgeon doctor. And she said, oh, I'm booking you for a CAT scan. I said, well, how do I find out about my bone scan? She says, oh, I have the results right here. And so she told me, she says, well, oh yeah, your results, there's nothing on there. There shows a little bit of arthritis in your left knee, and other than that, you're good. And I was just like, I couldn't believe how the relief I felt at that moment. I didn't start crying, but your brain kind of goes, and it's just an awesome feeling. You feel like you've won the lottery. So then she went on and explained to me about the CT scan, which was the next thing. And I only really absorbed the fact that you should drink a lot of water before. My brain kind of turned off. So going to the CAT scan the next few days later, I had worked already during the day in the daycare. And I was just worried because it was like at 5 o'clock that you were checking yourself in. I thought I better grab a little bit to eat. Grabbed a couple cookies, ate those on the commute, and then I get there, and of course I hadn't listened to any of the instructions. So I was wearing clothing that had metal in it, so I had to disrobe. I wouldn't have had to do that. And I found out, like, when the scan was just ending, that, oh, I wasn't supposed to have eaten. But luckily it was only for 2 hours before. So just don't eat 2 hours before the scan. They will see it. She assured me that it was okay. I didn't have to do it over again. She says, well, now that we know, we can tell if it's just a little bit of food there and in the lower part of your body. So with a CT scan, that is an IV dye that they put in. And so they put in an IV drip into your arm, and they don't put anything in until you're actually in and all set up on the table. It's a very similar type of table than the bone scan. Might be the same thing, I'm not sure. But so you lie on the table, your arms are up over your head, and then she hooks you up to the IV, and then she tells you that you will feel a very strange hot sensation coming in when the dye comes in. So it'll start at your head and work its way down, and she says when it gets to your pelvic area, it's going to feel like you've peed your pants, but you really haven't. So just trust me that you haven't, because we want you to lie still. And so again, they leave the room, and your an automatic voice comes on, this robot voice comes on and says, please take a breath now. And so you take a breath and you hold it, and then they scan, and then you can breathe now. And they do that like 2 or 3 times. And then they said, we're going to inject the dye now. And so that goes in, and sure enough, it wasn't like super hot. So I was nervous because you've never done it, but it was like quite warm, and it started on my ears and it went down, and sure enough, it felt just like you were peeing yourself. But yeah, so the actual scan itself didn't take very long, but I was there for about 2 hours from start to finish, just waiting my turn in the lineup of people all waiting to get in there. So yeah, drink lots. Don't eat 2 hours before. Don't worry too much about the dye coming in. It doesn't hurt. It's not overly hot. It's just a weird sensation. So a while later, I've got the results. So I phoned my doctor after that, and I said to get my results, and I didn't know my results of my HER2 test as well. So I got those results just a few days ago, and again, I was very blessed and happy to hear that there is no cancer that they can see anywhere from here down to my lower pelvic region. So that was awesome news. So I'm only, as far as we know, only dealing with breast cancer. So it's funny, it's all a matter of perspective. Once you've gone down that road and you really try hard not to think of the worst, it is that the thoughts are still there. And so so at first you're like, oh no, I got breast cancer. And now I'm like, yes, I only have breast cancer. That seems like a little less insurmountable for me. So it's just interesting. My HER2 results, which is another factor, is negative as well. So that was also a really good piece of news. So overall, I'm happy with the results. I still have my Muga Scan to go. I got to go back there on Monday morning. That's the day before the oncologist, and get that done. They make sure the chambers in your hearts are all working. It requires another dye, not an IV, apparently. I asked this time. Don't wear any metal. You don't have to prep for it. I think it's just going to be an injection, and then they do the scan for that. So I'll be all checked out from head to toe. They never did scan my brain, so I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I'm glad it's just one last test. And so, oh, yeah. Yeah, and then the only other thing I'm going to mention now is I did have a slight sore tooth the other day, and it was like jabbing off and on. And I'm like, oh, I should get that checked before I start chemo. So I went in and did get it checked, and it wasn't anything. But they said it's a really good idea to do that before you start your chemotherapy, because once you're in it, your body, your bones won't be able to, if you needed anything major done, your body will not be, your bones will not be able to handle it, and the healing would be like really, really difficult. So I encourage you to do that before you start chemo. And also he said, the dentist said, and I really, really strongly advise that you get your teeth cleaned before, because your mouth and your teeth and your bones and everything is going to be going through a lot. So give it as much help as you can beforehand, and then they check out and make sure there's no decay anywhere that they can see. So I had that done this morning. So that's all good. And I got some more tips on for what to do with your oral care, your teeth care when you're on chemo too. So I'm going to add that to my next video. So yeah, lots of appointments. I don't know how people who do work through this do it. It must be a nightmare. But yeah, for me, it's been all good news. And so I'm very thankful for that. Okay, that's it. Next time we talk, it'll be about prepping for chemo. Thanks.